The Travelling Cat Chronicles by Hiro Arikawa. Chapter 3. Sugi in Chikako's Hotel for Pets. Relax with their beloved pet while taking a breathtaking view of Mount Fuji. This was the slogan which Sashuki Sugi and with his wife Chikako launched their bed and breakfast 3 years ago. The whole thing came about when the company Sugi worked for started to struggle and began to explore the ideas of voluntary redundancy. Around that time, a B&B next to a fruit orchard owned by Chikako's parents came up for sale by a greatly reduced price, and the couple bought it. Locked by by stock and barrel, opened it up for business. They considered it a part of appeal it would be to offer from a discount to guests wanting to pick your own in the orchards next door. This worked both ways, for it would benefit the orchard business to have customers referred to them, which was another reason they decided to take the plunge. In the end, though, the B&B's biggest selling point was that they allowed pets. It was Chikako who came up with that idea. By using the first and second floor, plus a small cottage in the grounds, they were all able to lodge guests with dogs or cats separately. Dogs and cats each have their own floor, and as long as they get on with their own kind, they can enjoy life or leave it outside their basket. Issues of compatibility were left to their owners' discretions. Very few B&Bs in the area allowed both cats and dogs, and the most places just for dogs. Some of the larger inns accepted both of them and demanded that pets remained on a lead or in a basket. Sugi was more of a dog person, so at first he wasn't really sure about his wife's idea, but after the B&B had been running for 3 years, he had to admit that she had been very perceptive. In addition to Chicago's family business, there are plenty of orchards and wineries nearby, and with the prefecture of of this area attracted a lot of tourists. Well, but a B&B where cats could stay stress-free was almost unheard of. A word of mouth and repeat business led to an increase of cat-owning guests. In all these days, guests with cats outnumbered those with dogs. Chikako loved all cats, and the cat-owning guests always received a warm welcome, and she'd never been happier with the guests who were arriving today. And Chikako had been on the second floor, making the bed of the sunniest twin room, and now, dirty linen in hand and humming a tune, she made her way downstairs. "You seem pretty upbeat," Suki said. He tried to make it sound casual, but it came out sounding utterly churlish. Chikako looked at him, puzzled. "Aren't you happy?" Satoru Miyawaki is bringing his cat for the very first time. "Of course I am, but," Sugi hurriedly said hurriedly, trying to gloss it over. "I was just wondering if his cat will get on with our pets." Their own pets were a dog, a Kaken breed, and a brown tabby cat. The Kaken was a 3-year-old male named Tomaru, and while the brown tabby cat was a 12-year-old female named Momo. Tora mean tiger, got his name from the distinctive orangey brindle fur that certain Kaiken dogs have, while Momo means peach, was named after the main crop of a orchard. "Don't worry so much, it'll be fine. Our little ones are used to having guests." Sugi persisted despite Chikako's teasing smile. Toro's always giving his cat. I'm sure he can't be too happy about that. The man they were expecting was their mutual friend, high school friend, Satoru Miyawaki. The email arrived in Suki's inbox saying that though Satoru loved his cat very much, there was a very compelling reason why he couldn't keep him any longer. He was looking for someone to take care of him. No explanation of what this compelling reason was, but when Sugi noticed that the newspaper had a large corporation that started to lay off employees, he didn't pursue the matter. Satoru's company, as you recalled, was a subsidiary of that corporation. If an organization that big began laying people off, Sugi pondered, that I guess only be expected that my own company would do the same. He was lucky to have left his old firm when he did. "But if we take on the cat, we can give him back at any time, can't we?" Chikako said, and laughed. "I'm thinking of it as a more temporary arrangement. I'll take good care of him while we have him, of course. That goes without saying." A temporary arrangement. Sugi hadn't considered that. Chikako was always so positive and forward-thinking, and always looking on the bright side. Calling Sugi prudent made it sound positive, but the fact he was always tended to be far less optimistic. Always the exact opposite of Chikako. There was always some sound reason for him to give it away of his cat all of a sudden, but one day, I know, Satoru will come back for him. Chicago seemed to believe categorically that Satoru's love for his cat would overcome all obstacles. When it came to cat love, the two of them had always been on the same wavelength. Bed linen in hand, Chicago went to the laundry room. Get down, Momo! Their cat seemed to be asleep on the top of the washing machine. Satoru says his cat is named Nana. Make sure you get on with him now, Chicago said like she was singing it as he said this. Oh, she called loudly. Darling, make sure you tell Toro the same thing. Both the dog and cat were equally important to them, but in the practical terms, there was a clear division of duties. Chikako, the cat person, was in charge of Momo, and while Suki, more on the dog side, once on the other side of the divide, handled all things about Toramamu. Whenever there was something major happening in our family, we needed to inform both our dog and cat. This proposal by Chikako had become a firm family rule. Sugi slipped in his feet and sandals and left the entrance and went outside. The weather was fine, and during the day they had left Normal have a free run on a special fenced-off space in the front yard. Sugi's father-in-law, who prided himself on his carpentry skill, had built a kennel on Tormamu. Tora! Hearing his name, Tora wagged his curled tail energetically and leaped up to his owner. He could only jump so high, it looked like he would Monday bound over the high fence and be on the safe side. Whenever the guests arrived, they pulled him on a lead tied his kennel. The expert who had given him the dog who told him now their breeds divided into two types. The slim type who were built for chasing deer, and the thicker set of type who were good at chasing wild boar. Tomorrow was the textbook deer type. For 2 days, Satoru would be their only guest, so Sugi had left Tora off his lead. Satoru is coming this evening, the friend I told you about. Sugi had acquired Tomuramu 3 years earlier when they opened the B&B, but right about that time, Satoru moved over to a busy section of his company and had little free time to visit him in Chicago. Sugi had been able to see him occasionally when he went to Tokyo to purchase food for the B&B, but it would be the first time in 3 years that Chicago had seen him, and the very first time for Tomaru. Satoru had always been very busy with his work, so Sugi presumed his job must be secure. But with staff cutbacks, there can be many factors at play. This is the first time you'll see Satoru and Nana, Tora, and I'll hope you get on with them. Giving Tomamu's head a brisk rub, the dog let out a throaty growl. Rough stroking like this was one of the real pleasures of having a dog. If he tried the same with Momo, he thought, she'd probably lunge at him, claws bared. You'd be on your best behavior, okay? Tomamu looked searchingly in Sugi's eyes and gave another husky growl. That day, there was no derves about to pop kind of music playing the Silver Man. Perhaps he was thinking of having a break on this scar stereo. Satoru had the radio on instead, and while a little ago, a refined, astounding older gentleman had been enthusiastically introducing a book of some program or the other. Apparently, he was an actor. He talked elegantly, and yet he would use unexpected language, words like cool and awesome, that even for a mere cat like myself, hearing this gentleman rattle on and on how awesome a book made what really made me smile. All well and good, but no matter how appealing a book might be, I can't read it. As I explained earlier, most animals are multilingual when it comes to listening, but reading is beyond us. Reading and writing seem to belong to a special linguistic system that only humans possess. If Mr. Kodama and his host of programs likes to read that book so much, maybe I should read it, Satoru murmured. While he was away at home, he spent more time reading books than watching TV. If he had known that he known that this had an occasional tear as he turned pages. If he ever caught me watching it during those moments, he looked embarrassed to say, "Stop staring." The book program came to an end, and after a while a nursery song began to play. Put your head above the clouds, look down on all other mountain around. Sometimes it's nice to hear this kind of gentle singing, but though the melody was making me sleepy. Hear the thunder roll above. Mount Fuji is the highest mountain in all of Japan. Hmm. At this last line, I sat up, rested my paws on the passenger seat window, and craned my neck to see out. For a while now, there had always been a huge triangle mountain plonked about in the distance. Oh, did you make a connection, Nina? Humans always underestimate our language skill, just 'cause they can read and write, and there's no need to act all high and mighty. That's right, it's a song, Mount Fuji. Great timing, don't you think? When that triangular-shaped mountain in space spread so wide, loomed closer, Satoru said, "That's Mount Fuji." On TV and in photos, it looks just like a triangle that flopped onto the earth, but when you see it in real life, it looks overwhelming, like it's closing in on you. It's the highest mountain in Japan, at 3,776 meters. There's even a mnemonic device for people who to remember the elevation. It'll be like Fujisan. Fujisan no yo nimi na ni na ru. There's are many higher mountains around the world, but a freestanding still mountain is unusually high. Satoru rattled on, explaining all kinds of facts in great detail. I get it. How great it is. You don't need to go on and on and on. It makes total sense why there's a song dedicated to it. Yada yada. You really have to see it with your own eyes, though. If you only seen it on TV or in a photo, it'll always remain like a triangular mountain just sitting there. Like to me, until right this moment. Being big has its advantages, and being a big cat makes it easier to get by in life. Still, this mountain was pretty darn amazing. I wondered how many cats in Japan have actually seen Mount Fuji, unless they actually live around here. There can't be too many. Our silver van was like a magic carriage. Every time I got into it, it carried me to a place I had never been before. At that moment, we were without a doubt the greatest travelers in the world, and I was the greatest traveling cat. A van veered off the main road and drove into a thick, lush forest. The branches of the trees on either side had a bunch of white paper bags hanging from them, apparently to protect the peaches from going on them, to keep insects off, and help the fruit ripen. After zigzagging for quite some time, we finally had a large white house appeared in front of us. We're here now. This must be the bed and breakfast Satoru had talked about. The inn run by some friends that had accepted pets. Today, this place was reserved just for us. As the van pulled into the parking lot, big enough for about 10 cars, a man, Satoru's age, came out to greet us. "Suki!" Satoru gave him a wave, unloaded his bag from the van. "Is this your bag? I'll help you. Apart from Nana, I've only brought a change of clothes, as it's just the one night." Sugi took hold of his friend's bag, and Satoru carried me in my basket. Together they climbed the gentle slope to the B&B's entrance. Wow, what a wonderful place is this! Is that a dog run? On the way up the slope, it was a fairly large fenced-in space, which looked like a kennel near the back. I wanted a space where my dog could run free. A kaiken, isn't it? I remember you said you had one. From the inside of the basket, I sniffed the air, a disgusting smell that belonged to the venereal rival to cats. I squinted through the bars and watched as a hard-faced brindle dog sprang to his feet, stared challenging in the right direction. Yeah, his name's Toramaru. Is he okay living with a cat? Of course. We have Momo, you know, and a lot of other guests that bring their cats. Ah, that's right. I already twice heard from Satoru that the middle-aged female named Momo. He was twice my age, and he said I was fairly young, so would we get on? Hey there. Hello. Nice. Glad to meet you, Toramaru. Holding his phone out over the fence. Hold on a minute. Don't speak to that dog. I glowered from inside my basket. This kaiken, who went by the name Tomuramu, cast a sharp glance in our way, and growled and bared his yellow teeth. Isn't he in a bad mood, then? In an instant, Satoru inclined his head. Ruff! The dog barked at him. Whoa! As you might expect, Satoru quickly pulled his hand from back the fence. Hey, knock it off, hound! Every hair on my body went standing on the end. If you're gonna pick a fight with Satoru, then I, a cat with a strong sense of pride, am not gonna just sit there and take it. If you don't want that nose of yours to cut to shreds, then apologize right this instant, you mangy mutt. Tora! Suki scolded him, but the mutt didn't stop his miserable yammering. Satoru tried to soothe me too. It's okay, Nana, just hang in there. He was holding the door of the basket closed from the outside because he knew I would be quite willing to have it out with that stupid dog if I had to. I'm really sorry, Sugi said. He's not usually like this. No, it's okay. I wonder if we did something to upset him. What's going on? A woman hurried out of the front door, a pretty woman wearing an apron. Is Tora angry? It's no big deal. Hi, Chikako. How are you? This is from Satoru, who waved his hand at the woman. Satoru, I'm so sorry. Is everything alright? No worries. I'm just not used to get to cats or dogs getting angry with me. It startled me for a second. That's true. From an animal's point of view, Satoru was a pretty stress-free human, the kind that passing dogs and cats found no reason to pick a fight with. An impudent dog like this leaping out at him was definitely a first. I'm so sorry, I really am, so Sugi apologized, making another knock it off gesture at the dog. Toramu let his curled tail droop. Serve you right, you stupid hound. Maybe it's fine, really, Satoru said, trying to smooth things over. He seems like a good, dependable dog. Maybe I just look a little dodgy to him. Satoru tried again, reaching over the fence to scratch the dog's neck. The mutt quietly allowed him to stroke him, but it was obviously to me he was still suckling. Try flashing those gnashers at Satoru again, even for a split second, mate, and you'll have me to deal with. Through the bars, the dogs and I exchanged some seething, hostile looks. But when Satoru was shown inside the house, there was an unavoidable pause in the action. We were shown a lovely sun room on the second floor. After you get settled, come on down, Mr. Chikako-san said. She turned and went nimbly down the stairs. Well, I'll take a look around the room, then I easily unlocked the door of the basket from the outside and suddenly slid out. And the neat little room had a wooden flooring from a V-line point. The view looked perfectly cozy. Oh, hello there, Momo. At the sound of Satoru's voice, I spun around to face the doorway. A small, dignified, brown female tabby was sitting quietly in the corner. Double my age, but still quite limber, from the looks of things. Hi, nice to make your acquaintance, Momo greeted me in a dignified voice, quite in keeping a dignified tabby. I hear you and Tomo have already scrabbled. I let out a sniff. That dog has no manners, baring his teeth at humans who try to say hello to him. He couldn't have been well enough brought up. Though I was thoroughly sarcastic in my comments, and Momo smiled dryly. Please forgive him. It's just as your master is precious to you, so is Tomo's master is precious to him. Your master is precious to you, so you bark at your master's friend? That doesn't compute at all. As sensing my displeasure, Momo gave another wry smile. I'm really sorry. I believe our master is not quite as strong a character as your master. I still didn't get it. I refrained from objecting though, because I didn't want to be disrespectful to an older lady. He seems to be getting on well with Momo. Totoro had come down on the lobby come lounge, and with a smile he was pointing upstairs. They're in the bedroom, getting to know each other better. Now, if only Tormemo could be friendlier. Maybe he's angry that I brought a cat along? He should be used to guests bringing cat by now, Chikako tilted her head, puzzled, offering some herbal tea. Jolly, did you explain things tomorrow, didn't you? Chikako scolded Suki, joking. Of course I did. Suki played his tone a little snappy. You be on your best behavior, okay? Suki had said, and Tomorrow gazed into his eyes. So why did he bark at Satoru? Maybe Toramu had detected some discomfort in Sugi. Wow, this is delicious, Satoru had said as he sipped his tea, and Chikako beamed. I'm so happy. I guess I seem to like it too. The herbs are from our garden. Chikako looked over at Sugi sternly. It's the first time I made herbal tea for him, and he said it was like drinking toothpaste. One silly slip of the tongue back from where they first got married, and Chikako still bore a grudge. Thinking about this, Sugi had still often wished he could follow Satoru's lead and be a little shrewder in dealing with things, but in truth, Sugi found openly praising anyone a bit embarrassing. It's slightly sweet. What do you put in it? Satoru asked. Stevia. Oh, that makes sense. That is why I enjoy talking to Satoru, but we can talk about things like this. Your business seems to be doing well, Satoru said, clearing his throat. It is. Targeting gas with cusp was a smart move, Sugi said. All my idea, Chikaku returned. Indeed, entirely the wife's doing, Suki added. But what about you? Are you doing okay? Giving away your cat all of a sudden? Suki had found it hard to ask this question in an email, so he planned to do it when they were face to face. Yeah, well, you know. Satoru gave a troubled smile, and when he did, he looked suddenly very old. I heard the business group of your company belongs to it has started laying off people. It's not really that. There are other things involved. Hikaku gave Sugi a stealthy wink to signal him to stop. Okay, he signaled back. I'm so relieved that you said you'd take Nana for me. I asked quite a few people now and taken Nana to see them, but somehow it just hasn't worked out. There's one thing I'd like to say up front, Satoru, Chikako said, sitting up straight. We're thinking of it as temporary. We'll take good care of Nana, of course, but if things work out for you and you can take him back on, we have no problem if you can come back for him anytime. Satoru looked at this, though, had really struck a chord, and for a moment he pursed his lip and looked at his feet. That face, lips pursed, trying to get a best to keep his feelings in check, was one that both Chikaku and Sugi had both seen before. Suddenly, Satoru looked at him and smiled. Thank you. I'm sorry to be so selfish, but it makes me really happy to hear that. Satoru had become a mutual friend, but Sugi had been the one to first form a bond with him. In the spring of their first year in high school, the three of them were all in the same class. In their new form room, the students were from their previous junior high tended to group together, weighing up the situation, wondering who to make friends with. Satoru wasn't hanging out with anyone. There wasn't seemed to be anyone else from the school he had just come from. They had learned later that he had arrived from another prefecture in the spring holidays and had taken the transfer exam, which was why he didn't know a soul. It was during those periodic exams that they became friends. Sugi had crammed all night for the exam, and his head was stuffed with mathematical equations and English vocabulary. He was on his bike, heading to his school, pedaling as gently as he could, in case some unexpected jolt or vibration drove all the facts he memorized from his brain. Along the road to the school, he spied a face he knew. That looked like Satoru from my class, he thought, and drew closer. Satoru had got off his bike and was standing behind a wide ditch. The ditch was about the width of a stream. An agricultural irrigation channel lined with concrete on both sides was about as deep as a child was tall. Satoru was staring down at it, a serious look on his face. Suki wondered what he was up to, but he didn't much time have much time before school started. Their eyes had met, and he was thinking he'd just give him a nod and pass on by, but he began to feel that things would make it a little awkward later, so he got on a little bit and he stopped. What are you doing? Sugi asked. Satoru looked over him. I was surprised. He must have thought Sugi would just cycle by. I found something a little troubling, that's all. So Satoru was looked down, pointed down at the ditch, where Suki could see a small dog shivering. The dog had managed to scramble up on the top of a tiny sandbar where dirt and gravel were piled up. His thick white and brown fur was soaked in plaster to him. It's a Shizu. Suki knew the breed because Chikako's family had one. They ran through orchards, loved animals, and ever since she was a young child, they had several dogs and cats, which was something that drew customers in. And Suki had always envied their attitude to animals. Suki's family lived in their housing company, and his father was a middle management company, an employee. Because of his mother's allergies, the only pets she would allow were hairless ones such as goldfish and turtles. His dream had always been to have a dog, but this was never going to happen in his own house, so being with Chikako's family at least came close. He must have fallen in. I guess so, Toru said, nodding. There were no steps down to the ditch, and that they could see. He's not the type of dog you'd expect to be stray, so I reckon he must have wandered away from his home and got lost. At Chicago, during the day they let dogs run free in the orchards so customers came there for pick fruit, could enjoy their company, but at night they always made sure they were brought inside the house. Go on ahead, you don't need to stick around, Stroh urged him, but for Suki, it was a delicate decision. As if emerged later, he ignored a poor little dog that had fallen into a ditch, and then Chicago would be pretty upset. Yeah, but I'm worried about him. Glancing at his watch, Suki got off his bike. He was going to be late for school, but if he got there first before first period, he'd still be able to take the exam. Let's sort this out as quickly as I can. Satori smiled. You're a good guy, Suki. All he had been worried was Chikako's reaction, and he'd found the phrase from Satoru embarrassing. If we go down there, our ankles will get soaked. The sandbar where the Shizu was standing was too far away to leap from either side of the ditch. The water was full of algae and grass, so they couldn't see the bottom, as they were reluctant to take their shoes off in case there were any pieces of glass. Suki noticed a pile of boards on the left, the remnants, perhaps, of some scaffolding. He ran over and pulled on. If we angle the dog near the dog, angle it down near the dog, he might be able to use it as a bridge and climb along it. Maybe, but even the board right in front of it, the Shizu, did not react. They tried calling it, but the dog just stood there trembling, not taking a single step. Maybe it can't see it, Satoru said, a serious look on his face. If you look closely from the side, his eyes are a bit cloudy. He might be getting cataracts. It's hard to tell the age of the baby-faced dog, but its coat was definitely a bit worn. Amazing the little guy made it this far. There was a busy motorway nearby. It was a miracle the dog had been run over. Perhaps it had fallen into a ditch because it couldn't see properly. I'm gonna go down. I'm gonna use this. If we go, I won't get wet. Satoru put a foot on the board. They stretched out towards the dog. Be careful. It's dangerous. The board was old and weathered. It might not even hold a dog weight, let alone that high school boy. Just at the thought of these were going through Sugi's head, the board let an ominous creak. Whoa! Satoru swayed on the board, and in an instant it, completely in tune, collapsed into the ditch. There was a loud splash and a spray of water as Satoru landed on his rear and ankle steam water. Woof, woof, woof! The Shih Tzu barked and splashed his way violently through the water. Wait! Satoru scrambled to his feet and tried to follow him, but the splashing only scared the Shih Tzu even more. He didn't stop. Wouldn't think that he was old and half blind, the way the dog tore through the water. I'll run ahead and climb down. We'll catch him. Don't let him get away. Su- Suki harrowed down the road and past the fleeing Shih Tzu and took a flying leap into the ditch. There was an explosion of water, and Shih Tzu leaped in the air and screeched to a halt, then spun around and started to race back the way he had come. He's coming your way! Grab him! Satoru leaped towards the dog like a goalie, and the Shih Tzu made a tight turn, trying to slip past, but Satoru only managed to snag a hind leg. Panicked, the dog chomped on his hand. Ow! Hang on! Don't let go! Sugi wiped his blazer off, threw it over the Shih Tzu, and grabbed him. Swaddled, the dog gave up a struggle. You okay? Sugi smiled wryly. This could be pretty serious. Showing his hand, spots of blood were bubbling up. For such a little creature, the dog certainly knew how to bite. You better get to the hospital. No chance of making that exam now, Sugi thought. They took the dog to a police station beside the motorway. Where they went to the hospital, there was a problem. Sugi didn't have an insurance card. Being high school students, they didn't have enough cash either. They ended up handing out their school ID card and promising to pay to come back and pay. And Satoru was finally treated. By the time they got to school, the second period was just finishing. They went to the faculty office and explained to their form teacher what had happened. The whole thing sounded like a joke, but Satoru's resemblance to a drowned rat and his bandaged hands must have convinced her. For the teacher accepted their version of the events. What happened to you guys? Asked Chikako, playing the concerned older sister as the boys returned to the classroom. When she'd heard that about the rescued Shih Tzu, she wanted to see him, so they stopped at the police station on their way home. Toru was concerned about the dog too, so the three of them went together. The old Shih Tzu with his cloudy eyes was on a lead in the corner of the lobby. Bowls of dried dog biscuits and water were next to it. No one had reported a missing dog. He really is quite old. I don't think he can see well at all. Chikako knelt down in front of the dog and waved her hands in front of his eyes. The Shih Tzu was slow to react. I'm wondering if we could ask you to take him, a middle-aged police officer. Looking after a locked dog isn't really a policeman's job, so we can't keep him here for really long. If you can't keep him here, then what will happen to him? The officer tilted his head. If the owner doesn't appear in the next few days, he'll go to the pound. How could you? Chikako snapped. You know they'll put them down. If the owner doesn't turn up at time. Satoru, pale and silent, nudged Tsuji in the rib. How about keeping it in your place? He suggested. Instead of arguing with the officer, Satoru seemed to be looking for a practical solution. No can do. My mom is allergic to any animal that has fur. What about yours, Satoru? We're in a company housing, so they don't allow pets. Chikako, who is still carping at the police officer, turned around. It's okay, she said. We'll keep him at ours. Are you sure you can make that decision right now? Shouldn't you ask your parents or something? Satoru was alarmed about her snap decision, but Chikako just glared at him in irritation. Well, we can't just leave him here. Chikako called home from the payphone in the lobby. Almost an hour later, her father pulled up at the station in a small truck. They loaded her bike onto the truck bed, and Chikako got into the passenger seat and held the Shih Tzu in her lap. Okay, see you soon, she called. Satoru, if you're worried about him, you can come and visit him at my place. Ah, thanks. Satoru seemed a bit intimidated by Chikako's forceful manner. Then Chikako was gone, like a storm departing, and the boys burst out laughing. That Akira's son is really something. She sure is. She's always have a strong view when it comes to animals. Ever since she was little. Have you known her since she was a kid? Satoru wanted to know. We're childhood friends. Oh, I get it, Satoru said, nodding. That's why as a kid son call you Shutron? I told her to drop that. What's wrong with it? She's our cute, dependable childhood friend. The way he had actually casually called her cute startled Tsugi. Chikako was spirited, kind, and, yes, cute. He'd always known that, and Tsugi had never spoken about these things out loud. It would always made him feel like he had lost out, but with her family would really be okay, and taking in an unknown dog without any warning? Satoru asked. It'll be fine. Her family are mad about animals. They have 5 or 6 in dogs and cats already. Really? Cats too? Chikako's more of a cat person. I see, Satoru said, smiling. I love cats too. I wouldn't mind taking the Shih Tzu. is okay, but if it would be nice to see her cats too. Suki was hit by another wave of anxiety. It was clear that Satoru and Chikako were gonna get on well. That evening, Chikako phoned Suki, and the fact he had missed taking the exam in order to rescue the dog had made an impression on her. By the way, she said, which one of you found it? Suki wished he had been the one who come across the dog, though after saying this, if I had, I would have just let him be. Perhaps the most I would have done was check on him on the way home. Well, we were both passing about at the same time. A little white lie. But I think Satoru actually spotted him at first, he said hastily. We have spoken up to now, but Satoru's a pretty good guy. Chikako seemed to like Satoru a lot, and he had known she would. The three of them often talked together after this, and Satoru and Sugi often went to Chikako's house to see how the Shih Tzu was settling in. Whenever Sugi went to see Chikako, he'd be put into work helping out in the orchards, as would Satoru. But from the way he spoke, Satoru seemed like a real city boy. But he was, surprisingly, used to farm work, and Chikako's family quickly grew fond of him. The stray Shih Tzu's owner never did materialize, so the Takeda family ended up keeping him permanently. Churro felt badly about it, and he had tried to find somebody to take the dog, but Chico waved this away. The younger Shih Tzu, they had already got on with the new one. They were like parent and child, and typically, for Chikako, she referred to the latter as the Shih Tzu, the Shih Tzu Miyawaki gave us. The cats for the Sakita were friendlier to Satoru than to Suki. They had, from the start, sensed that Suki was more of a dog person. Things evened out, though. The dogs were much friendlier to him than Satoru, and Trishu Miyawaki gave us, perhaps, remembering how Satoru had been the one to chase him down, was friendlier to Sugi than to Satoru, who had found him. One day, at the school, Satoru was leafing through part-time jobs listings in the newspaper, and the end-of-term exams were approaching, and the teachers had joked with them not to pick up any more stray dogs. "Are you looking for a holiday job?" Sugi asked. "Yeah, I was wondering if there are any with a decently hour rate." "How come? Isn't your allowance enough?" "No, it's just I want to take a trip in a summer holiday. I'd like to go as soon as possible." "Where to?" "Kakura." Sugi didn't know the place. It's in the Fukuoka prefecture, just before Hakata. Sugi knew what exactly this meant, but he couldn't understand why Satoru would want to go there. Instead of going to Hakata, this was much larger. "I did have some distant relatives there," Satoru explained, "and they took in our cat when we couldn't have him anymore, and I haven't been able to see him that since." "I see," Sugi sighed. "It's not Kakura he wants to visit, but a cat. Why couldn't you keep it?" He asked this casually, but Satoru gave a troubled smile. He seemed unsure to respond, and Sugi was thinking that maybe he should change the subject when a shadow loomed over them. I heard. Laughing her usual audacious laugh. It was Chico. "Man, you're always sticking your nose into things, aren't you?" Sugi teased her. "Shut it!" she shot back. "I know exactly how you feel. Wanting to visit your beloved cat. I'll pitch in and help. Do you know where I can get to work?" Satoru asked. "And you can begin this very weekend." Chikako answered. "Really? If there's a job that good, then tell me about it too." Sugi had been thinking of getting a summer job himself. Having a part-time job in term time is prohibited, but there's an exception. This shall not apply to helping out with a family business, and if it is helping with a classmate's family business, if you apply, you can get permission to work at just the weekends. They'll consider it as part of shelter studies. In short, she was telling Story he could work in her family's orchard. The pay isn't going to be much, but I'll ask them to pay you weekly. If you can start work now, you'll be able to get your trip at the beginning of August. Story stood up, and so excited he nearly kicked his chair. The crop was ready to harvest, and a lot of customers were picking fruit in the orchard. Sugi joined them, working there on Sundays, except during exam time. Hourly wages were even less than working in a small supermarket, but at the time school closing ceremony was over, the trio had been able to put away about 2,000 yen. "What are you going to do with your money?" Shuchan Chikako asked. "I haven't thought about it," which wasn't exactly true. "Hey, do you want to go see a film?" he asked, trying to make it sound as if it just come up with the eye. "Your treat?" As he expected, she leaped out of it. "Okay. I mean, you did get me the job and all. Great. Maybe I'll sponge a meal off you as well." Only managed to get officially jump with joy. Smiling, Sugi said, Okay. Great. You weren't joking, were you? Don't you dare change your mind on later on." Chikaku, truly thrilled that Sugi would be footing the bill, certainly wasn't viewing this as a date, but for now that was okay. There was no need to rush things. On the first day of the last week of July, Satoru filled up the show for work. It wasn't looked at. He was always so conscious. unconscious and hadn't been able to been in touch to explain his absence. Suki wondered what's up lately. S- Satoru turned up an hour late. I'm very sorry I'm late, he he said, his face pale and stiff. If you don't feel well, you should take time off, Chikako's father said, but Satoru insisted he was fine. At lunchtime, Chikako's parents told the three of them to come back to the house. Satoru looked paler than ever. What happened? Has something happened? They asked again. But it obstinately insisted it was nothing, and he wouldn't say any more. Chicago was suddenly watching. Has something happened to your old cat? Satoru lips tightened and dropped his head, and he screwed up his eyes, and finally he allowed the tears to flow. He was hit by a car, he muttered, his voice broken, and he couldn't say any more. It seemed he had just got the news that morning.